first off, I just wanted to say before I get this out of the way, and I'm not blowing smoke up your arse.
Yeah.
I have been a fan of yours for years. I saw the Road Warrior in a on a grainy video in the mid '90s in Ireland, and I one of the things that I've loved about Mad Max that's been, I think, consistent the whole way through is the idea that it exists in its own world and it's been very kind of rigid towards that. I'm wondering, I mean, I know you kind of talked about how Fury Road, you had the idea since 1987. How long have you had Furiosa, I guess, in the hopper or in the chamber rolling around in your head?
Well, Fury Road, it was the late 1990s where it basically started to emerge. When we wrote the screenplay of Fury Road, and it kept stopping and starting, I made other films and so on. As part of the process, as we were building up towards shooting it, we realized that in order to tell a story which was specifically designed to be told on the run, basically happening over such a short period of time, we had to understand everything in that world, not only the characters, where they were from, but every vehicle, every bit of behavior, gestures, utterances, language, everything had to be consistent. Otherwise, the design of the film, the internal logic of the film would have been so random, it wouldn't have felt authentic. So we wrote the story of Furiosa as part of that. We devised the story before we shot the movie. We rendered it as a screenplay with concept art, and we did the same for Max in the year before we met him. In her case, it was from the moment she was taken as a 10-year-old from the Green Place all the way up to when she was a 28-year-old Imperator Furiosa, a road warrior. So, and that was a tool that everybody can use, cast and crew, and everyone understood it. So that emerged out of the evolution of the Fury Road script, and then all these years later, here we are having made that story.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I found I've always loved about Fury Road and now in this as well is the idea of, you can watch the film and just enjoy, the action and the stunts and, all the crazy kind of, the war rigs and everything else and all the rest of it. And then underneath it, there's like a lot of layers and a lot of subtext. And, the first time I saw Dementis on screen, and then later on when he becomes like the Red Dementis, I was like, he's Karl Marx. Like, that's what this is. Like, you're doing, it's sort of like, because when he talks about, we're all going to share in it, it's like, oh yeah, so we're, Dementis is a socialist. And then even when you talk later about, the fact that there were all these wars throughout the years and the 40-day Wasteland War and everything. I guess, I mean, what, for specifically to Chris, I mean, was Karl Marx an inspiration? Was kind of, anarchist leaders were all they kind of rolling around in your head when you were writing them?
Well, that's really interesting you say that. Here's what basically happens. One of the reasons why I'm so attracted to this world and telling these stories is that they are unmistakably allegorical. And therefore they are in the eyes of the beholder. According to your own worldview, you see things in them.
Right.
I think that's part of storytelling tradition from the earliest recordings of us telling stories. For me, the Dementis character, for instance, is a variation on a theme that we've seen right throughout history. And one of the exciting things about telling these stories is that when I hear people say what you just said, oh, he's Karl Marx, I realise, yes, it's not something that was consciously there,
Yes.
but you could argue there. Yesterday, someone in an interview said, for me, he had echoes of Idi Amin, and they quoted statements from Idi Amin that where he declared himself some sort of some grandiose, gave himself a grandiose title. That's what Dementis does. It had never occurred to me. The Karl Marx thing's never occurred to me, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's there. I found that it's one of the joys of filmmaking. It's why I've always gone into allegory. It's happened on Happy Feet. It happened on the Babe films. People are, according to their own worldview, according to their culture, there are interpretations. And the best example of that happening was somebody said someone went to Freddie Mercury and said, look, I think I've got a theory about what Bohemian Rhapsody means. And he explained it to Freddie Mercury, and Freddie Mercury said, at the end of it, he said, if you see it, dear, it's there. I think that's the nature of stories. Every fairy tale we tell, Hansel and Gretel, there's something in the telling of that story, for instance, by way of example, where the child who wants to hear it over and over again is processing something. It might be about abandonment. It might be about the kind of getting beguiled and seduced by a gingerbread house. It might be having to deal with the escape by tricking a witch to put a head in the oven. All those things are being processed. It's in every nursery rhyme and every story, every folklore, every mythology, and you could argue in every religious narrative.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's why I'm part of that process. These are part of that process. Look, I never thought about the red Dementis being there, but it's there.
It was the big beard and the red. It was like, that's Karl Marx.
Yes, that's wonderful. Never occurred to me. But now that you've mentioned it, I get two things. It reinforces this notion of the story, of the purpose of story, and the function of story. And I won't forget the analogy. And for me now, yes, it's Karl Marx. I think
you can use that for all your other interviews now. Yeah.
Sorry,
I can use it.
For all your interviews now.
Final question, because I'm running out of time. And I hate to bring it up, but I mean, obviously there was the production for Fury Road and the production for Furiosa were quite difficult. Has those difficulties made you gun shy about making another movie set in this world, or are you now sort of, forewarned and forearmed, and you know where the kind of the minefields are, I guess?
Yes. Look, every film is difficult. The core of the productions with people. The core of the productions and the people we work with are very. Look, when the best way to explain it, when I made the first Mad Max, and despite it being successful around the world, I thought, okay, I'm not cut out to be a filmmaker. It's too bewildering. And then I had a conversation with Peter Weir, who'd done 2 features by then, and he said to me, "But George, don't you understand that every film is difficult to make?" And he used the analogy of being on patrol in Vietnam. You've got your platoon, you've got to complete your mission. You don't know where the minefields are, you don't know where the snipers are, and you have to be agile enough to adjust to whatever circumstance to complete the mission. And it still stays with me, that notion. I remember I went into the second Mad Max, Road Warrior, and it was a way more arduous film to make than the first Mad Max. But I realised we had to adjust to any circumstance, and you don't know where the minefields are, and that's been the case, even in the animations, even doing something like a Happy Feet, that's going to be there. So I'm not. I do have more stories to tell, and you know, I have to go through them. The worst, I would say, by far the most difficult films I've had to make were the first Mad Max and Fury Road, simply because of the kind of dynamics, mainly with the studio, which was very dysfunctional at that stage. And it's been well documented. There was even a book on it. But you know, the studio at Warner Brothers now, the third, a different parent company, a different regime, a completely different regime. I think it's the fourth regime that we have now, and it's been, you know, that's been like something I've never seen before. Everybody working together coherently, like a really, really good football team, a really good crew, and from my background in medicine, a really great surgical team. They all have this in common. And right now, the experience I've just gone through with Warner Brothers, from the moment we started shooting all the way through to this process on this press tour, has just been remarkable. So you don't know where you have to put your energies, but you've got to stay agile enough to make your way through to some result.
Remember me.